Picture this. You're going about your daily life, living in the identity you've always known, when law enforcement appears at your door with news that will shatter everything you believed about yourself. You're not who you think you are, they tell you. You're a missing person. You're Michelle Marie Newton. In one sentence, your entire existence is rewritten. The name you've called yourself, the life you've lived, the history you thought was yours, all of it built on a lie that lasted 42 years. This is not fiction. This is not a movie plot. This happened in November 2025 when a woman in her mid-40s discovered that she had been the subject of one of the FBI's longest-running parental kidnapping investigations. Her mother had been living under a false identity in a Florida retirement community, hiding in plain sight for over 4 decades. If you're fascinated by cases where truth is stranger than fiction, drop a like and subscribe to Cold Case Beacon. And let me know in the comments, could you handle learning your entire life was based on a lie? Now let's go back to where it all began. To understand how a child can disappear for 42 years, we need to understand the world she vanished from. Michelle Marie Newton was born on October 5, 1979, in Louisville, Kentucky. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Louisville was a city in transition, known for the Kentucky Derby, bourbon distilleries, and tight-knit communities where neighbors knew each other's names. This was the world Michelle Newton entered. A world where parental kidnapping was just beginning to be recognized as a serious crime. Where a determined parent could still disappear with a child and build a completely new life. The infrastructure that exists today, the Amber Alerts, the national databases, the interstate cooperation between law enforcement agencies, none of that existed in comprehensive form back then. The Newton family appeared ordinary on the surface. Michelle's parents had married young and welcomed their daughter with what seemed like typical parental joy. But behind closed doors, their marriage was deteriorating. By the time Michelle turned 2 years old, her parents had separated and a bitter custody battle had begun. In 1982 and 83, courts were often biased toward awarding primary custody to mothers. Michelle's father was granted visitation rights, but Michelle's mother was awarded primary custody. The tension between Michelle's parents continued to escalate. Each visitation exchange became a potential confrontation. Then in the summer of 1983, everything changed. Michelle Marie Newton vanished. She was 3 years old. The disappearance happened during what was supposed to be a routine custody exchange. Michelle's mother was supposed to bring her to her father's home for his scheduled visitation, but she never showed up. Michelle's father immediately contacted the local police, reporting his daughter as missing and his ex-wife as the suspected abductor. But in 1983, parental kidnapping wasn't always taken as seriously as stranger abduction. Some law enforcement officials viewed it as a domestic issue rather than a genuine kidnapping. There was a pervasive attitude that a mother couldn't really kidnap her own child. But Michelle's father knew better. He had seen the signs, the way she had become more secretive, selling off possessions, closing bank accounts, making vague references to starting over somewhere new. The initial investigation was hampered by the limitations of the era. There were no cell phones to track, no social media accounts to monitor, no digital footprints to follow. Michelle's mother had paid for everything in cash, left no paper trail, and severed all contact with friends and family members who might have revealed her location. The Louisville Police Department issued a missing person report. Michelle's information was entered into the National Crime Information Center database. Flyers with Michelle's photograph were distributed throughout Louisville. Local news stations ran stories about the missing 3-year-old girl. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the trail grew colder. Michelle and her mother had simply vanished. Michelle's father refused to give up. He contacted the FBI, requesting that they open an investigation into interstate parental kidnapping. The FBI did eventually take on the case, but resources were limited. Michelle's case became one of many, a file in a cabinet, a name in a database, a photograph on a wall of missing children. The 1980s and 90s passed. Technology advanced. Amber Alerts were created in 1996. But Michelle Newton remained missing. The little girl in the photograph, frozen in time at 3 years old, was now a teenager, then a young adult, then a woman in her 30s. Throughout these decades, Michelle's father continued to search. He hired private investigators who followed leads that went nowhere. He updated Michelle's age progression photographs every few years. He maintained a dedicated email address and phone number just in case Michelle ever tried to make contact. He never remarried. He never had other children. His entire life became a vigil. Meanwhile, in another part of the country, a woman was living a completely different life. She had no idea that she was Michelle Newton. She had no idea that her entire identity was a fabrication. She had no idea that somewhere, a man she didn't remember was still searching for her. The woman who had been Michelle Newton had grown up believing she was someone else entirely. Her mother had created a new identity for both of them, complete with fabricated birth certificates, school records, and a carefully constructed backstory that explained why they had no extended family, no old photographs, no deep roots. She had been told that her father was dead, that he had died in a car accident when she was 2 years old, too young to remember him. She had been told that her mother's family had disowned them after her father's death, that they had blamed her mother for the accident, that they had been forced to start over alone with no one to help them. She had been told 1,000 small lies that created a tapestry of deception so convincing that she never thought to question it. She went to school under her false name. She made friends who knew her only as the person her mother had invented. She celebrated birthdays on a date that wasn't actually her birthday. Every October 12th, her mother would make a chocolate cake with vanilla frosting, Michelle's favorite. They would sing happy birthday, blow out candles, open presents. Michelle never knew that her real birthday was October 5th, 7 days earlier. That the chocolate cake and vanilla frosting were traditions built on a lie. That every candle she blew out was celebrating a false identity. She grew up, graduated, started a career, fell in love, all while living a life that wasn't truly hers. Her mother had settled in Florida. The Sunshine State, with its large population and constant influx of new residents, was the perfect place to disappear. They had moved to a retirement community where the culture of polite non-interference meant that people didn't ask too many questions. Michelle's mother had maintained her false identity flawlessly for over 4 decades. She had obtained a driver's license under her assumed name. She had worked jobs, paid taxes, opened bank accounts, all while living as someone she wasn't. She had been careful never to apply for a passport or do anything that would require intensive background checks. But in 2025, 42 years after Michelle Newton disappeared, something happened that would finally bring the truth to light. Someone contacted Crime Stoppers with information about a woman living in Florida who might be connected to a decades-old missing person case. The tip was vague at first. It mentioned a woman in Florida, a retirement community, a daughter who might not be who she claimed to be, and a possible connection to a 1980s missing person case from Kentucky. When investigators cross-referenced it with their databases, Michelle's case popped up as a potential match. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. The FBI agents assigned to follow up began by reviewing the Michelle Newton case file, for decades of documents, photographs, and investigative notes. They looked at the age progression photographs of Michelle, comparing them to the limited information they had about the woman in Florida. The investigators began conducting surveillance on the residents mentioned in the tip. They watched an older woman in her 70s and a younger woman in her mid-40s. They ran the names these women were using through every database available. What they found was troubling. The younger woman's identity had unusual characteristics. Her birth certificate had been issued later than it should have been. Her social security number had been issued in a way consistent with someone creating a new identity. Her educational records didn't go back as far as they should have. These irregularities, combined with the Crime Stoppers' tip and resemblance to Michelle's age progression photos, were enough to justify direct contact. On a November morning in 2025, FBI agents approached the residence. When the younger woman answered the door, the agents identified themselves and asked if they could speak with her. She agreed, confused but not yet alarmed. The agents began carefully, asking basic questions about her background. Then they asked about her birth certificate, about discrepancies they had noticed. She seemed puzzled, explaining that her mother had always handled the official paperwork. They asked about her early childhood memories. She admitted that her memories didn't really start until she was 5 or 6 years old. Finally, the agents told her why they were really there. They showed her photographs of 3-year-old Michelle Marie Newton, who had disappeared from Louisville in 1983. They showed her age progression images. They explained that they had reason to believe she might be Michelle Newton. Imagine being told this. Imagine having FBI agents sit in your living room and tell you that your entire life is a lie. That your name isn't your name. That your birthday isn't your birthday. That the mother who raised you had stolen you from your father when you were a toddler. The woman's initial reaction was disbelief. She insisted there had been a mistake. She became defensive, then angry, then frightened. The agents explained they would need to conduct DNA testing to confirm her identity. When Michelle's mother returned and saw the FBI vehicles, she knew her deception was over. When the agents confronted her, she didn't deny what she had done. She admitted to taking Michelle from Louisville in 1983. She admitted to creating false identities. She admitted to cutting off all contact with Michelle's father. But she tried to justify it. She claimed she had been protecting Michelle from an abusive father. These claims would later be investigated and found to be false. The truth was simpler: she had decided that if she couldn't have her daughter on her own terms, she would take her and disappear. DNA testing was conducted immediately. The results came back quickly. The woman living in Florida was indeed Michelle Marie Newton. After 42 years, one of the FBI's longest-running parental kidnapping cases had been solved. Michelle's father was contacted immediately. He was 71 years old now. When the FBI agent told him they had found Michelle, he broke down. All the years of pain came flooding out in a moment of overwhelming relief. But his joy was complicated. His daughter didn't remember him. She had lived her entire conscious life as someone else. She had been told he was dead. The FBI arranged for Michelle and her father to meet in a neutral location with counselors present. When they saw each other for the first time, Michelle's father saw his daughter, the little girl he had lost, now a grown woman. Michelle saw a stranger who claimed to be her father. They stood in that neutral room staring at each other. Michelle's father wanted to rush forward and embrace her, but the counselors had warned him to let Michelle set the pace. So he waited, his hands trembling at his sides. Michelle noticed his eyes, the same shape as hers. The same color. It was the first concrete proof she had seen with her own eyes that this impossible story might be true. The meeting was brief and emotional. Michelle's father tried to explain that he had never stopped loving her, that he had searched for her every day. Michelle listened, but she was still processing the revelation that her entire identity was false. In the following weeks, Michelle began reconstructing her true identity. She met with FBI agents who showed her photographs from her early childhood, documents from the custody battle, newspaper articles about her disappearance. She obtained her real birth certificate, Michelle Marie Newton, born October 5, 1979. She learned that the birthday she had celebrated her entire life was wrong. The stories her mother had told her were all fabrications. The psychological impact was profound. Therapists explained that Michelle was experiencing betrayal trauma. Her sense of self had been built on deception. She had to reconcile two contradictory versions of herself, the person she had been for 42 years, and Michelle Newton, the kidnapped child. Michelle's mother was arrested and charged with kidnapping, custodial interference, and identity fraud. At 73 years old, she faced significant prison time. The legal proceedings were complex. Her attorney argued for leniency based on her age. The prosecution argued that the length of the crime made it more serious. Michelle testified about her childhood, acknowledging she had been well cared for but also describing the profound violation she felt upon learning the truth. Michelle's father testified about the 42 years of anguish. Michelle's mother was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Michelle's reaction to the conviction was complicated. Part of her felt justice had been served. But another part grieved for the woman who had raised her. Love and betrayal coexisted. Michelle began rebuilding a relationship with her father. It was awkward at first. They started slowly, coffee meetings, phone calls, exchanging photographs. He showed her pictures of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins she had never known existed. He gave her a box of belongings he had kept, baby clothes, toys, birthday cards he had written but never been able to send. Michelle met her extended family. They welcomed her back, but she felt like an outsider, listening to them share memories she hadn't been part of. One of the most difficult aspects was dealing with practical implications. She had lived 42 years under a false name. Every official document had to be addressed. She worked with legal experts to sort through the bureaucratic nightmare. Beyond legal issues, Michelle faced profound personal questions. Who was she now? Could she integrate these two versions of herself? Michelle sought therapy. Her therapist explained she was experiencing complex PTSD. Recovery would involve grieving multiple losses, the life she thought she had, the relationship with her mother as she understood it, the years she could have spent with her father. Michelle's father also sought therapy, accepting that while he had found his daughter, she was not the child he had lost. Building a relationship would require patience. The case attracted significant media attention. Child advocacy organizations used Michelle's case to highlight that parental kidnapping causes profound psychological harm. They called for stronger laws and better resources. Michelle eventually became an advocate. She spoke at conferences, sharing her story and encouraging others to keep searching. But she was honest, finding their children wouldn't erase the pain or give back lost years. Reunions were complicated. As time passed, Michelle and her father built their relationship. They created traditions, Sunday phone calls, monthly dinners, annual trips. Every Sunday at 7 p.m., Michelle's phone would ring. She would see "Dad" on the caller ID, a word that still felt strange but was becoming more natural. They would talk for an hour, sometimes about important things, sometimes about nothing at all. Her father would tell her about his week, ask about hers. The content didn't matter. The ritual did. It was time that couldn't be stolen, connection that proved they were building something real from the ruins of what had been taken. They discovered shared traits, similar mannerisms, shared interests, inherited sense of humor. Michelle's father showed her the room he had kept for her all these years. He had never given up hope. The room represented 42 years of love. In one corner sat a rocking chair where he had planned to read her bedtime stories. On a shelf were books he had bought for birthdays she never celebrated with him, picture books for a 5-year-old, chapter books for a 10-year-old, young adult novels for a teenager. All still wrapped. All waiting for a daughter who never came home. Michelle wept looking at this physical manifestation of her father's devotion. Michelle made peace with being two people. She was Michelle Newton, reclaiming her stolen identity. But she was also the person she had been for 42 years. Both were valid. She eventually visited her mother in prison. Her mother tried to justify what she had done. Michelle confronted her with the harm caused. Her mother finally admitted she had been selfish. Michelle looked at her mother across the prison visiting room table. This woman who had braided her hair for school every morning. Who had taught her to ride a bike. Who had also stolen 42 years from her and her father. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," Michelle said quietly. "But I need you to know that some of my memories with you were real. Some of them were good. And I hate that you've made me question all of them." Her mother apologized and asked for forgiveness. Michelle couldn't give it. Not yet, maybe not ever. Forgiveness wasn't something that could be demanded. Her mother asked if Michelle had any happy memories from their time together. Michelle thought before answering. Yes, there were happy memories. Those memories were real to her, even if the circumstances were false. As Michelle's first year living as her true self progressed, she legally reclaimed the name Michelle Marie Newton. She decided to be open about her story. She connected with other parental kidnapping survivors, finding invaluable support. Michelle's father continued to be a steady presence. The first Thanksgiving together was awkward. By the second, things were easier. One moving moment came when he gave her a photo album he had compiled, pictures from her first 3 years, age progression photos, newspaper articles, and letters he had written but never sent. At the end, he had left blank pages. "These pages are for us," he explained. "For memories we'll make from this point forward. We can't get back what was taken, but we can fill these pages with new stories." Michelle hugged her father. "Thank you for never giving up, for finding me, for loving me even when I was lost. I would have searched forever," he said. "However long it took, you were worth it." Michelle's mother died in prison 5 years after her conviction. Michelle attended the funeral, saying goodbye to the complicated person who had raised her and stolen from her. Michelle continued building her life as Michelle Newton. She turned her trauma into advocacy, working with legislators to improve parental kidnapping laws. She offered support to other families in similar situations. Her relationship with her father deepened. They took trips together, explored family history, and created memories that filled those blank pages. Michelle's case became one of the most well-known examples of successful recovery in long-term parental kidnapping. But beyond being a case study, it was a human story of loss and recovery, of a father's unwavering love and a daughter's journey to reclaim her stolen identity. Despite everything, Michelle survived. She built a life. She found her way back to her father. She learned to integrate the fractured pieces of herself into something whole. She turned her trauma into advocacy. She proved that even the most devastating betrayals could be survived. Years after her discovery, Michelle was asked what she would say to other victims of parental kidnapping. "I would tell them that their feelings, whatever they are valid. There's no right way to feel about this situation. Healing is possible, but it's not linear. Get therapy. Be patient with yourself. And know that you are not defined by what was done to you." She was asked one final question. "If you could go back and change what happened, would you?" "Part of me wants to say yes," Michelle replied. "I want those 42 years back. But if I had grown up as Michelle Newton from the beginning, I wouldn't be the person I am now. What I wish is that it had never happened in the first place. But given that it did, all I can do is move forward. Honor both the Michelle Newton who should have been and the person I actually became. And that is what I'm trying to do every single day." This is the story of Michelle Newton. A case that proves families torn apart by parental kidnapping can be reunited, even after decades. A story about a father's unwavering love and a daughter's resilience in reclaiming her stolen identity. If this case has moved you, subscribe to Cold Case Beacon and turn on notifications. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Your engagement ensures these stories reach more people and these injustices aren't forgotten. This is Cold Case Beacon. Michelle Newton's case proves that even after 42 years, truth can prevail. Thank you for watching. Remember that somewhere right now, there might be another Michelle Newton. And somewhere, another father still searching. These stories deserve to be told. These families deserve justice. Never stop searching for the truth.